Okay, so in this Nebraska game on Saturday, I just want to point out a few things that I never pointed out before the game. I had talked about Southern Miss's stats going into the game. I never mentioned Nebraska's, so I just want to pull that up really quick here. Um, Interesting, I talked about the number 71 like crazy, and the ties in with Moses, the Moses theme. Moses because Moses freed the slaves, just like Abraham Lincoln. Nebraska plays in Lincoln, Nebraska. In the Sea of Red, Moses parted the Red Sea. Tons of other stuff if you go back and watch the previous videos. But pointing that out, they had 71 pass completions. Also, there was Drew Brown. I talked about how it seemed like all these games are definitely coded dealing with a punt and also the field goals and whatever. And the number 12, there was a lot of 12 and 21. And interesting, the kicker here is 12 for 12 on extra points, and then even has 21 points going into this game. And he was a big part of this game on Saturday as well. He's also 3 of 5, which is 60%. I talked about 60 a whole bunch of times. It's just been super significant. It's been coded in pretty much every main news story that I've read. So interesting. But anyway, I'm just going to pull this up really quick again and show you what I'm talking about. So interesting about 71 is that Moses adds up to 71 in Gematria. The Ten Commandments, Nebraska, even punt and field goal, and the word Catholic. And I've talked about how it ties into the Pope being in the United States, especially with Philadelphia. Anyway, first play of the game, or first drive for Nebraska of the game. Nebraska went 8 plays for 71 yards and scored their first touchdown or whatever. So I was like, man, they're definitely going to code this game with 71 and whatnot. And they did do a little bit, but the game was more about 35. And if you watch the game, you know what I'm talking about. I'll play a few clips of this guy, but he never had one carry all season, one touch of the ball, and he's number 35, and they made it a huge deal. They even said they were going to make shirts for him to be for president or whatever, this guy for president. And, I mean, interesting, this picture even, you got 34 and 35. But the 35 actually goes with the 17 because the word Catholic in Gematria actually adds up to both of them. Catholic, we'll just type it in here, Catholic, 71, but in Pythagorean Gematria, it's 35. Interesting, that was the first day that the Pope was in Philadelphia, and I talked about how this was coded clear back to even when Jerry Sandusky was molesting kids or whatever at Penn State, in Pennsylvania or whatever, Philadelphia. It all tied into even the movie Tommy Boy, where they make that big part about Herbie Hancock, and Nebraska's mascot is Herbie. And on top of that, on the Love Bug, like Herbie the Love Bug, was number 53. And I made a video a long time ago about Herbie. When I started talking about all this Nebraska stuff, it dealt with the movie Teen Wolf, but also in the beginning of September, I said they killed off the actor from Herbie, and then it was all coded with the Nebraska football game. So interesting, it's 53, and then now they're busting out the 35-53 coding into the game. Another 35 was Tommy Armstrong Jr. He threw 35 passes, 23 of 35. Also, going into this game, his quarterback rating was 89.8. And it doesn't show it now, but going into this game, he had 898 passing yards. You take 1266 and you subtract the 368, it gives you 898. But the reason I even mention that is because the attendance of the game. So this was the 343rd home or consecutive home sellout, the NCAA record or whatever. And that's why I thought it was going to be a really significant game, because all the other games were all about the numbers 34 and 43 and whatnot. But the attendance of this game, if I could find it here. Here it is, 89,899. I mean, just kind of interesting. Also in Gematria, Tommy Armstrong Jr., 239. Interesting. So like the September 23rd, everyone talked about like crazy, the Pope. But even if you do September 23rd in Gematria, September 23rd, it's 269. This game was on the 269th day, and even if you write it out as a date, it literally was 26-9. And there's other stuff that I mentioned about it, why I thought this game was going to be important in previous videos, but I'm trying to make it a little bit shorter. Anyway, I wanted to show you number 35 then. Andy Janovich here. He had 5 carries for 68 yards. Like I said, he never had one touch until this game. And then he had 5 carries for 68 yards. That's pretty good. I mean, but also, he had 1 catch. Look what it was for 53 yards. Number 35, his only catch, 53 yards. It was the biggest reception on Nebraska. But look at Southern Mississippi. Look at their biggest reception. It was also 53 yards. That's pretty interesting. Southern Mississippi rushed for 17 yards, or their longest was 17 yards. They actually finished the game with 11. I mean, give me a break. Even Nebraska's kick returns, it says 3 for 31 yards. And that's significant to the Michigan game that ties into it as well. But as Michigan won 31-0, but even Nebraska had 1 punt return for 17 yards. Now, I want to show you this punt return as well. All right, so a 17-yard punt return. Probably the biggest hit of the game. And look who hit him. Number 17. Number 17 plows into him on Nebraska's only punt return for 17 yards. Also, their kicker, Drew Brown, then, he finished the game 5 of 7 for field goals, which is almost 71%. I guess it's a 0.4, so it's not quite 71%. But that's interesting, too, because let me pull up the play-by-play here, and I'll show you. Actually, I don't even need to bring it up. I can just tell you. I mean, he hit his 5 field goals that he made were all in the first half. 5 for 3 points. There's a 53 reference. And I mean, how you don't hear that very often. 5 field goals in the first half. That's a pretty good amount of field goals. And right before his first field goal, the announcers say that he is 3 of 5 on the season. So going into the game, he was 3 for 5, and then he kicked 5 field goals in this game as well. Or he made 5 field goals, not kicked. Interesting too, this game, like I said, was the 343rd consecutive home game sellout crowd or whatever. And that all started on 11/3 of 1962. 1962 will be 53 years ago in November of this year. But also check out the amount of time from this. So it's 5 weeks and 3 days before the 53rd anniversary of the home game consecutive streak sellout. I mean, give me a break. Nebraska even scored their 35th point with 9:30 left in the fourth quarter. So 15 in the first quarter, 15 in the second, 15 in the third, that's 45, plus 5.5. That's 50 minutes and 30 seconds. I mean, another 5 in the 3 when you take out the zeros even. Also, on this play, after this happened, there was 2 penalties offsetting, and they made sure that you knew that it offsetted and the kick was going to start at the 35-yard line. Another interesting thing to note is that right before this play, number 35, whatever his name is, Janovich, on Nebraska, he scored a touchdown that they brought back because of a penalty. So 35 would have scored the 35th point. I couldn't believe they brought it back. It blew me away. But 35, the penalty got brought back. The next play, Tommy Armstrong went in and scored a touchdown on a run. Also, if you just watch this game in general, there was lots of things. Nebraska got gypped big time on a lot of plays. Like, there was a pass interference call that was like, no way a pass interference call. and the guy even spiked the ball, and then so they got a penalty or whatever on top of a spiking penalty on top of the pass interference penalty. He thought that it was like the defying moment in the game, and Nebraska was for sure going to win. I couldn't believe that there was a whatever pass interference, but they had to set it up so Southern Miss could come down, and they wanted to set it up to make it look like they were going to make a comeback and do like a Hail Mary BYU kind of thing. But anyway, number 13 here, he kept getting hurt at the end of the game, and Nebraska fans were booing because they thought that they didn't have any timeouts left, and they thought he was faking so they could get an extra timeout kind of thing. And it happened 2 times. But his name is Picasso Nelson. I just wanted to point out his name in gematria. 53. So I'm running out of time, so I'm going to talk about why the number 53, I believe, it was, other than being about Herbie, and Nebraska's mascot is Herbie. And I'll talk about some other stuff that goes along with it in the next part. But anyway, a long time ago, I was noticing 53, and I felt like it's kind of coded for next year, 2016. And like I said, I'm not even exactly sure what it all means, but I talked about Queen Elizabeth becoming the queen, or coronated, on 6/2 of 53, which is 62 years ago. And she also turned 35 years old in 1961. That's the same year that Obama was born. So she turned 35 the same year that Obama was born. Interesting too, JFK, the 35th president, the only Catholic president. He's also 44 years older than Obama, the 44th president. And we've talked about all these things about foreshadowing of an Obama assassination, just like they did with Abraham Lincoln and JFK, all the mirrors and whatnot. But there's definitely foreshadowing, and it ties into the JFK assassination as well. And next year, on November 22nd in 2016, it will be the 53rd anniversary of his death. Also, if you come and look at the prime numbers, 53 is the 16th prime. And I don't know if you noticed, but Queen Elizabeth is queen of 16 of the British or whatever Commonwealths of the 53. So she's queen of 16 of the 53. Interesting, too, on these prime numbers, I talked about 9 being the 23rd, so 923. But 7, the 7th prime number is 17, kind of like 717. With the amount of people who just died in the stampede. But you keep reading down here, the 71st prime number is 353, kind of like 35 and 53. Another interesting thing, I just seen Zachary K. Hubbard did a video on this guy, and it was all about 35 and 53, which I thought was funny. But he announced his retirement on September 25th, and it becomes effective on October 30th. So 35 days before it happens, or he retires, he announces it. It's also 53 days before his birthday, his 66th birthday, November 17th. Let's type it in really quick. 53 days before his birthday, even. Interesting, too, about him, I talked about all the coding with 60, and it's been in the news lately. Like I said, watch the previous videos. John Boehner in Pythagorean Gematria is even 60. Also, May 3rd, like 5/3, is the 123rd day of the year. This guy is supposedly the guy who's going to replace Boehner. Not for sure if it is, but that's what they talked about in the article. And that day, the day he announced it to this guy's birthday, is 123 days, or 4 months, 1 day. And I've mentioned 41 a whole bunch. I'm going to talk about it later with the Dolphins game. And I'll probably start the next video with a recap, so all of this makes a little more sense. Also, the 35th prime number is 149, and I talked about that with Back to the Future, because flux capacitor is 149, just like the day Abraham Lincoln died. But 88 is the speed of the car, 239 and a bunch of other stuff is the gas, and flux capacitor is 149, so a 53 or 35 could have to do with what makes time travel possible. Another random 53, Nebraska's coach, adds up to 53. Well, I'm out of time, so I'll just make a part 2 and continue on. Have a good day. Night.